changed the law. What's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border legally. It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed a train wreck, a total, complete, utter train wreck. Remember this moment in time, okay? Because you can tell your children and your grandchildren, wow, I remember the night the Democrat Party went down for good. I mean, what have they been telling us all along? It's just cheap fakes, nothing to see here, right? He's totally in his prime. Well, we got evidence last night that was not the case at all. He came out weak from the start. You have only to look at Joe Biden walk to start to question whether or not he's still there. And then as soon as he talks, forget about it. And apparently he had a cold on top of that. So the cold, plus maybe the teeny little bit, dare I say, of dementia. I'm sorry, if you've seen it in somebody before, you recognize it. Well, that causes some problems for somebody who's the president of the United States. And it was quite evident. We have a lot to play you here tonight. Welcome to the program, everyone. I am Trish Regan. This is the Trish Regan Show. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you share. Make sure you watch, if you did not last night, some of these clips, because they're pretty darn unbelievable. And you're saying to yourself, or at least I'm saying to myself, who the heck is running our country? Because clearly he's not. Clearly, he is not. I mean, maybe Jill. That's what we've talked about before. Can you imagine? Remember the commercial that Hillary Clinton did years ago? It was like, who are you going to call in the middle of the night? And she was trying to point out the inexperience of Obama. Here you go. You could do that commercial all over again. It would be, who are you going to call in the middle of the night? And all of a sudden, Jill Biden, Dr. Jill, picks up the phone because she's his handler. She's in charge. He's not. I mean, he just doesn't have the faculties right now. 12 minutes into the whole thing, he starts rambling on and on and on and on until Jake Tapper saves the day. I'm like, why did you do that, Jake? Watch.
Debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid.
Wow. Okay, just wow. So you saw Jake Tapper come in, the moderator, kind of save him a little bit. He must have hit his 2-minute mark, but he didn't know where he was going. Joe Biden had no idea where he was going. This was just unbelievable to see. I mean, really and truly. We thought, maybe they'd help him out, give him some extra coffee, that kind of thing, like maybe they did at the State of the Union, and that he'd be firing on all cylinders, but he was not firing on all cylinders. Donald Trump, on the other hand, was fantastic. Absolutely, positively, spot on, fantastic. He had all the facts on his side: border, immigration, international stuff. I mean, you have only to mention what happened in Afghanistan. He had all the facts on his side. And his delivery was outstanding. I'm watching it, and I'm getting heated, right? Like, I'm watching this going, oh my gosh, what did he say on the economy? And what was so critical in that moment in time, and Donald Trump did this beautifully, was that one needed to stay calm. One needed to stay focused. One needed to stay centered. And this is what Trump did. So Joe Biden kept trying to go after him. He kept needling him and saying some kind of off-color stuff at one moment in time. And then he called him the convicted felon, this, that, and the other. Tried to allege that he got handed 9% inflation. That's a flat-out lie. And Donald Trump stayed calm. And he fought back with facts. And those facts matter. Look, it's pretty unbelievable. I mean, I think about just the humor also with which Donald Trump was able to deliver some of his comebacks. I mean, this is one of the best moments, guys. You remember this when he said, I don't really know what he said. I don't think he knew what he said. And we're all sitting there going, yeah, exactly, because we don't know what he said. And we guarantee you, Joe Biden doesn't know what he said. Watch.
I've changed the law. What's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border legally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people.
Yeah. I don't think he knew what he said either. I mean, it's amazing because you compare and contrast even Joe Biden of this moment in time versus 3.5 years ago. Go back to the 2020 debates. He's a different person. He's declined so quickly. Unfortunately, this is what dementia does. And again, I'm not a doctor, but sadly, I've seen it in loved ones. And it can move very, very quickly. And that was pretty evident last night. I think the American people saw that. The American people were shocked. Democrats even seemed to be shocked, which is kind of surprising because, we've pointed this out a few times along the way, and yet they were taken by surprise. But just read these headlines, ladies and gentlemen. The New York Times. Tom Friedman out with a big column today saying, President Biden is my friend. He must bow out of the race. Frank Bruni writing, Biden cannot go on like this. Patrick Healy saying, I'm hearing high anxiety from Democrats over Biden's debate performance. And Christoph writing, President Biden, it's time to drop out. I mean, when you've lost Nicholas Kristof from the New York Times, you got a problem. We're going to get to that in just a moment because you're now starting to hear a chorus of Democrats. And I have some trepidation about that because I'm almost wondering at this point, was this kind of a setup? I mean, they had to have known. They had to have known he was going to bomb, right? Anybody who's been around him for 2 minutes, they know that he's not quite up to it. So why did they allow him to do it in the first place? Ask yourself that question. Why did they allow it? Is it because they wanted to have good reason to be able to wipe the slate clean? They wanted to get it done now? I mean, this was really, really, really bad. Really, really, really bad. I mean, in the beginning, I was like, we're going back to this one again. You heard him. Blaming the economy on Donald Trump. It's just wrong. It's just flat out wrong. Substantively, he was wrong. Factually, he was wrong. And then mentally, he wasn't able to keep up.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president, what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do is try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. The price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over.
Okay, so he goes on and on and on and on. He doesn't really make any sense here, guys. You know that. He's not able to really make any sense because he's just in over his head. Okay? He's past his prime. He's 81 years old. And if anything, this shows you that age is only a number. Because Donald Trump, as he points out, is just 3 years younger than him. And yet Donald Trump, he's got it going on. My gosh, Donald Trump actually looked like his, dare I say, his son up there. I mean, he could have been 30 years younger. It was like Biden didn't even really know where he was. I mean, this came up. He talked about age.
Actually, nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized as being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people, the whole idea of computer chips. We used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call that to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would.
He went on to talk about how this guy's just 3 years younger. Like I said, it could be 30. It really could be. It could be. And Donald Trump brought this up. I mean, the cognitive test. For goodness sakes, Joe, take one. Of course, that would be the end. I mean, he really and truly, guys, he might have to resign. And he can't just bow out. Like, he can't just say, okay, I'm out. Like, the American people saw that he's not actually running the country last night. Let's go to Trump on the cognitive ability
your
or lack
second
thereof.
term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them. both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds. Or 20.
Okay. It gets even more interesting from there. So Biden's trying to poke at him. And then somehow they start getting into this golf match idea. This is my favorite part. I mean, who needs an election, right? Just settle it on the golf course. Let's go to the driving range, folks.
And one of them said they'd never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8. But I had, how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay,
Let's not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
Let's not act like children.
Thank you.
concern
Thank
that voters
you.
have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal...
I mean, when Trump had to say, let's not act like children, I mean, Biden really underperformed. I mean, unless this is the best he could do. I mean, for God's sakes, do you remember that he took 7 days off? He went to Camp David for 7 days to prepare for this. And this is what you got, folks. Dun da da. All right? Like, think about that. Just think about that. 7 days. And this is the result. Gosh, we're in like worse shape than we ever thought. And then, he's making up lies. At one point, he makes up this little doozy. He starts talking about how the Border Patrol loves him and that they've endorsed him, which is not true. Watch.
We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was taking separate.
No, buddy, they didn't endorse you. And you know what? They started correcting you in real time. So immediately, no sooner had he said that than we saw the Border Patrol out with a tweet, which read, quote, "To be clear, we never have, we never will endorse Biden." Dun, dun, dun. Okay, all right, we got a little bit of a problem. This was just an abomination. Again, we knew that he was in bad shape, but this is really bad shape. Who allowed him to do this? Think about that. They knew he was in bad shape. They knew he couldn't handle this, and yet they allowed him. Why? Why would you do that? I mean, just play with me for a minute, and we're going to speculate a little bit, because I'm looking at this going, gee, if I were you guys, I would have stood by that whole cheap fake thing. You just keep making things. I mean, hey, maybe that whole thing was an AI ripoff. Maybe that was a cheap fake that we were watching last night. Listen, they were at least able to hide behind some of that. I mean, we didn't believe it, right? And I sat here, and how many times did I tell you, no, that's not a cheap fake, And by the way, we did play the entire video, and he can't walk, and he's slow, and it's obvious, and he's looking out, dazed and confused all the time. So those weren't cheap fakes. And you couldn't make the same kind of quote unquote cheap fakes about other people because they weren't walking and looking the way Joe Biden was. So they don't have any of that to hide behind anymore. So why were they willing? You got to ask yourself, why were they willing to put him out there, knowing that no one could actually still say, the emperor has these gorgeous clothes, right? This is the emperor has no clothes. Everybody would have to then admit, because we saw it. It was pretty transparent. I mean, heck, when you got CNN fact-checking you, check this out. You're not able to hide behind anything anymore.
Some of them. He said he's the only president in a while who didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. Troops have, of course, died on his watch. He said he's put in a $15 per shot cap on insulin and Medicare. It's a $35 a month cap. He said it's a $200 cap on overall drug spending in Medicare. It's $2,000 a year. He said the border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. That's generally not true. He said, or at least strongly suggested, unemployment was at 15% when he took office. It was actually 6.4. He said Trump wants to get rid of Social Security. Trump doesn't. He said billionaires pay 8.2% in taxes. It's much higher. He said Trump told Americans to inject bleach amid COVID. We know Trump made foolish comments about scientists studying disinfectant injection, but didn't frame it as advice to people. And Biden said the Border Patrol endorsed him. No, its union supported the border bill he supported, never endorsed him himself.
Okay? So now you get CNN fact-checking you, Biden. I don't know what to tell you, other than it's probably time to call it quits. Of course, you guys should have thought about that ages ago. I said all along, you can't run the guy. You really and truly can't run the guy, not unless you want Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan all over again. But they ran him anyway. And now they're freaking out. I mean, the number of people that said that Donald Trump won that debate, overwhelming. They had a flash poll on CNN. Overwhelming number of people said it was Trump that won. I mean, he did, right? Like, I don't think there's any question about it. All you had to do was string a sentence together and stand up straight and well, have, a beating heart, basically. That was not a hard debate to win. Trump did do an excellent job. He didn't get mad. He didn't take the bait. I was very, very impressed. I thought he really conducted himself in tip-top form. But let's be honest, that was not a difficult debate to win because Joe Biden performed so poorly. And so now what are they going to do? I think they're going to have to retire the guy. ASAP. But don't take my word for it. Go to some of the party bigwigs, including Van Jones, who was on CNN last night, calling it like it is.
I can walk you through how I'm supposed to see it and say it, but I just want to speak from my heart. I love that guy. That's a good man. He loves his country. He's doing the best that he can. But he had a test to meet tonight to restore confidence of the country and of the base, and he failed to do that. And I think there's a lot of people who are going to want to see him consider taking a different course now. We're still far from our convention, and there is time for this party to figure out a different way forward if he will allow us to do that. But that was not what we needed from Joe Biden, and it's personally painful for a lot of people. It's not just panic, it's pain for what we saw tonight.
So they know that he can't run. So why did they let him do that? Was it a setup? Did they actually think, okay, we're going to do this, and then we get all the media to jump on board and say he can't run again, and then he won't be able to run again, and then we'll be able to get somebody that we want in there because they're so worried? I mean, you just look at the poll numbers, and all of America was already starting to say, look at him. I mean, Nate Silver even just the other day from 538 coming out saying, at some point you may need to think about running another candidate. You really might, because Trump is cleaning up in the Midwest and all the swing states. And listen, if the election were held today, for sure, he'd win by a pretty large margin. Here's Joy Reid telling us she spoke to the Obama camp and people are in a near panic mode. I bet they are.
That said, I too was on the phone throughout much of the debate with Obama world people, with Democrats, with people who are political operatives, with campaign operatives. My phone really never stopped buzzing throughout. And the universal reaction was somewhere approaching panic. The people who were texting with me were very concerned about President Biden seeming extremely feeble, seeming extremely weak. And, you know, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. President Biden had one job tonight, and it was one primary job. And yes, it was to litigate Donald Trump's, you know, criminality and all of those things. But he had to settle his own party. He needed to settle Democrats. Democrats, you know, they always talk about Democrats are bedwetters and Democrats are always panicking. Yes, Democrats are always panicking. They're always scared, right? They're always thinking they're going to lose. Like Democrats are very pessimistic. This is just neurotic. Who they are. They're neurotic. But Joe Biden's job was to reassure them tonight. His job was to calm his party, to make them feel that, yes, I can do this. I have 4 more years in me. I have the ability and the stamina and the strength to do 4 more years. He did not do that. He did the opposite of that. He made them more panicked. The people who were texting me were even more panicked. They actually expected it to be better than it was. And now they're in I won't say a full-fledged panic, but it's getting there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much there. And so now the question becomes, how do you retire him? I mean, even Jen Psaki, right? Little Peppermint Patty, who got a job on MSNBC after working for the Biden administration. She used to have KJP's job. She was the press person. So what was her job? To spin some more. Even she said, you know what? We can't sugarcoat this. We just can't. Here she is.
California Governor Gavin Newsom. Many thanks to you both. Jen Psaki has joined us here at the table. Jen, what was your reaction to the debate, and what are you hearing from people you've been talking to over the course of the night?
Well, I've been listening to what you all have been saying, and I don't think we should sugarcoat this. This was not the debate performance that the Biden campaign team wanted or needed from this debate, in part because they wanted to do this debate as early as they did to change this up, right? To bring the Joe Biden who was at the State of the Union to the debate stage. That's not the Joe Biden who showed up at the debate stage. You could see inklings of that or wrinkles of that or whatever you want to say at the post-debate event, right?
In the very last answer of the debate, and when all of a sudden it was like, oh, he's warmed up.
Yes, yes. And as you said, Rachel, he did improve as the night went on. His voice improved. His answers improved. He had a couple of moments. I thought his answer on calling out Trump's criminality was pretty good. He was a little garbly on abortion. If you're the campaign, you're going to push out the best moments. There were a couple on social media. But it's not the debate they wanted. I think the biggest challenge for them, and Nicole's been talking about this a little bit, and we've sat in similar chairs, is how distracting all of the chatter is going to be, which we're all getting on text, on email, about whether he should be replaced. That chatter is happening. People are asking questions. I don't mean it's from the American public writ large, and we don't know how they feel, and we won't know for some time. And if you look at history, this may not impact them at all. But the chatter is very distracting, and it's going to be very consuming for the campaign. Should he be replaced? They're going to be answering that question instead of breaking through on attacking Trump.
Well, they will. And that question is out there. I mean, heck, even Chris Wallace, whom I used to work with at Fox, was saying something to that effect on CNN. Watch.
This has been, quite frankly, a car accident in slow motion that we've seen over and building and questioning it. And, you know, as has been pointed out, Joe Biden sought this debate at this remarkably early time because he knew he was losing and he needed to change the narrative. Yep. And he did change the narrative. He sunk his campaign tonight.
Boom! He sunk it. It's over, Joe. You're done. Maybe they helped you sink it. Maybe they wanted you to sink it. Maybe this was all a setup because somebody else is waiting in the wings who happens to have the last name of Obama, right? Maybe that's the intention. But they don't have a lot of time. I mean, they got like 120 days, right? Like they don't have a lot of time. You got a convention that's coming up. This is kind of uncharted territory. I mean, you want to talk about having a constitutional crisis, you may just have one because you know what? You're going to have all these people circling saying, Joe, we want you out. We want you done. And Joe's not going to want to leave. I've given you the analogy of the elderly patient with the car keys right before. I mean, he's got the keys to the world. Why would he give that up? He's worked his entire career to get there. And think about the people he's surrounded with. His wife, clearly, is allowing. She's an enabler. I mean, if you were his wife, wouldn't you be like, okay, no, I'm sorry, you guys, like, this is not happening. My husband needs some time alone. And yet she's there leading him on and off the stage, trying to cue him, telling him what to do. It was really sad. So one has to assume that she's somewhat power hungry herself. Think about the son, Hunter. I mean, what's he going to do once it's over for Pops? I think he's got his own set of problems. So there are a lot of people, enablers, if you would, around him that want to see him continue in power. But I think the reality is this is not a guy who's going to get elected. Certainly not after that. Certainly not after what we saw last night. I mean, you know what's really offensive about it all? What's really kind of unbelievable, you guys, is that we had to sit there forever and listen to how coherent he was. Do you remember that? Like, I just have this, was it Joe Scarborough who's like, oh, he's the best he's ever been? I think we have some clips. I want to show you. Here's what you know, guys. Here's what you know. The media lied to you. Lied to you, lied to you, lied to you, lied to you. Just like they lied on the 51X spooks and the Hunter Biden laptop. Just like they just lied on the Nobel Prize winning economist trying to say that Trump is worse for the economy than Biden is. Give me a break. They've been lying the whole time. They try to tell you that this is a guy in A-OK tip-top shape form. He's not.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
She knows so long as she's denied.
In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been.
President Biden has a photographic memory. His understanding and mastery of a complicated geopolitical situation is remarkable.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
Jackie, are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here.
I was sitting, 2 feet from him across the table, and he was, intense.
Have trouble walking sometimes? Yeah, so did FDR. He wanted GD war.
But he's totally focused. He's very sharp.
They say he's sharp in meetings and so on.
Very lucid.
Oh my gosh, I can't take it anymore. You know what, guys? He's not very sharp. He's not very there. Unfortunately, he's an 81-year-old man who is likely in some stage of suffering from dementia. And he's got a wife who, for whatever reason, is allowed. I mean, who is Jill Biden? Who is she? Why would she allow this? I'm telling you, that's the person in charge right now. We say, who's running the country? I mean, it could be Obama, right, behind the scenes. But you got Jill out there front and center who must be controlling access to the hubby the whole time. And what we've just learned is that it's got to be somebody else. Somebody else is going to have to run. So who is it? Who is it? That's what we need to know right now. Who can they put in the spot? Well, there's one guy who's always around the edges, who's done a terrible job with his own state, but would give anything, I think, for the big gig. You know who I'm talking about, the slick back hair and everything, Mr. Gavin Newsom.
It's a non sequitur. I don't even understand.
He was asked about it.
This is the President of the United States running for re-election. He's our guy. And that's part of the diversion tactic of the right, to continue to sort of muddy the waters on all that and that nonsensical speculation. It's just like the absurdity of who's going to get an injection shot. I mean, this is farcical. It's serious stuff. Democracy, freedom, liberty, rights, and to see it trivialized as we're trivializing it, even having these conversations, is really distressing to me as an American citizen, not just as a Democrat.
Governor,
good answer. So distressing to me. How can we even talk about this? It's farcical, farcical, farcical. Well, you know what? You got to talk about it. I don't want you talking about it because I actually think the most beatable candidate in the world right now, other than Kamala Harris, is Joe Biden. You guys had your opportunity. You missed it. You blew it. He's not going to surrender. Jill, Dr. Jill, are you kidding me? She's not going to surrender. She's going to tell you it was an off night, that he had a cold. I mean, Mika Brzezinski from MSNBC was on television this morning saying, well, it was so late at night. 9 o'clock. Our president can't make it up till 9 o'clock. Come on. What are we going to do when there's a real crisis, right? This was an embarrassment. It was an embarrassment to the country. It was an embarrassment to the Democrat Party. It was an embarrassment to the media that sat there and told us he was doing great. For how long? It was an embarrassment to everyone. But here's the more important thing to think about right now. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a country that is not in a very good spot right now in light of considering who is running it, if anybody's running it. So I'd like to see him stay at the top of the ballot, selfishly, because I don't want taxes going up for you or for me or for anybody else. I want our economy to grow. I want our border to be secure. I want inflation to come down, and I want to make sure that there's peace in the world. At risk of sounding like a Miss Universe contestant, listen, we want peace. We want stability. We need economic stability. We need border stability. We need a candidate that can give us that. It's not going to be Gavin Newsom. Just take one quick look at California. He's a train wreck. Plus, I'd love to see the opposition research that Kimberly Guilfoyle has on Gavin Newsom. Just saying, right? She's not on your team anymore, Gavin. So there's that. And then there's, Michelle Obama. Interestingly, you didn't hear from her last night. The reality is they're going to have a consensus candidate if they decide to replace him, if they can replace him. I mean, I don't know is this is a guy who's going to be willing to step down. And if he does step down, he needs to actually step down now and put Kamala in. Because if he has to step down because of a lack of cognitive ability, which is exactly what it would be for, then what is that signaling to the rest of the world? Hey, if I'm China, I'm taking a harder look at Taiwan right now, right? After seeing that episode last night. So if he backs off, what happens? You put Kamala in. You think Kamala's going to be okay with not getting the opportunity to run for president? You guys are going to just ignore a black woman, put Gavin in, the white guy of all things? I don't know as that plays in Peoria, so to speak, and thus they usher in that consensus candidate. And then, ladies and gentlemen, that makes it a much more challenging race, in part because, you know what? We will not have had an opportunity to have vetted Michelle Obama in the traditional sense. And by that, in part, I mean the American public will not have had an opportunity to grow enormously sick of her, as they would in a normal campaign cycle. So this is exactly, if you're really playing a serious game of chess, how you might maneuver this. And that would be really, really bad news for America. It would be bad news because we would be much closer to becoming the socialist country that Obama would love us to be. Hello, Venezuela. They'll have nothing on us. So this is a serious time, a lot at stake. It's important you subscribe. I also want to mention, as we consider all this inflation, as we consider what might be under a Gavin Newsom, under a Michelle Obama, I can't even believe I'm saying these things. I hope that does not happen. I think that they do have to run him. They have to, right? Otherwise, you are looking at some kind of constitutional crisis. Or you get Kamala in there. Anyway, amid this whole backdrop, I think it's really important that you look out for yourself. Don't rely on Uncle Joe or Uncle Sam for that matter. Go over to 76 Research. We have a very special deal right now at 76 Research. This is the company I co-founded with my dear friend and colleague, Rob Horton. Great stock picker. Go over there. You can get a subscription right now. This is sort of my gift to you guys because you've certainly given me a lot. Thank you for that. Just $1 a month. Just $1 a month, introductory price there at 76 Research. You can also take a look at some of the model portfolios. I think the math works out to something like an additional $23 if you get one of the model portfolios with 10 to 15 stocks in each one of them, all designed to help you really sustain and grow for the future. We take this pretty seriously. This is the best, I kid you not, the best financial research I have seen on the market, and that's Wall Street and that's Main Street. So do yourself a favor as we go into the weekend and you realize the chaos that we're dealing with over there in Washington, D.C. And look out for yourself and your family. Go to 76 Research. Let us help you with our outstanding, high-quality research. Great stock names there. 76research.com. Use code DOLLAR. I can't forget that. DOLLAR. Use that code DOLLAR in order to get the $1 subscription. I mean, this is unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. You know, one of my kids said to me last night, Mommy, do you think he knows where he is? I'm like, no. You know what? You know, it's just sad. What are they doing to him? What are we doing to ourselves, for goodness sakes? It's time for change. We need a good conservative in that White House that can enact good policy to help all of us succeed. I leave you with that as we go into the weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you right here live on Monday and over the weekend with much more.